If you have ever had someone look all in, speak like they are all in, act like they are all in, and then disappear like you never mattered, this episode is for you. Because that pattern does not just hurt your feelings, it rewires your nervous system. It turns your self-respect into a negotiation. It makes you question reality. And the most dangerous part is that the present version looks real enough to keep you hoping, while the disappearance is sharp enough to keep you anxious. So you get trapped between two versions of the same person, the version that feels like home and the version that makes you feel disposable. Today, we are going to walk through a realistic case, step by step, moment by moment, so you can see exactly how the loop forms, why avoidant attachment can act devoted and then vanish, why anxious attachment gets so hooked by the all-in version, and what to do that ends the cycle without begging and without performing. You will leave with a clear capacity test, the exact words that protect your dignity, and the rule that stops your nervous system from being trained by disappearances. If this kind of clarity helps your nervous system settle, subscribe. PsychBond is a daily decoder for avoidant and anxious patterns, so you stop guessing. Here is the case. We will call them Ethan and Claire. Claire is anxious. Claire values consistency, clarity, and repair. Claire has learned that when love is unclear, the body stays on alert and the mind goes into tracking mode. Ethan is avoidant. Ethan can be warm, intense, even romantic, but Ethan experiences pressure as threat and interprets expectation as loss of freedom. Ethan does not wake up and decide to hurt someone. Ethan has a safety strategy. Stay close enough to feel connected, stay undefined enough to avoid obligation, and when the body feels trapped, create distance to feel safe again. In the beginning, it works for both. Claire feels chosen. Ethan feels unpressured. The intensity is not fake. It is real in the moment. But real in the moment is not the same as real in structure. And then, the first real moment arrives. The moment that reveals structure, not chemistry. Scene 1. The start. Claire meets Ethan, and the first week feels unusually steady. Ethan texts first. Ethan checks in. Ethan remembers details. Ethan makes plans. Ethan shows up on time. Ethan is affectionate. Ethan says things like, "I have not felt this calm with anyone." Ethan says, "You make me want to be better." Ethan says, "I deleted the apps." Ethan says, "I am not talking to anyone else." Ethan says, "I want to focus on this." Claire feels relief, not because Claire is needy, but because Claire is finally not guessing. Claire sleeps better. Claire eats normally. Claire stops scanning the phone. Claire starts imagining that this is what safety feels like. Ethan likes this too. Ethan likes the closeness, the admiration, the softness. But Ethan is only comfortable because nothing is defined yet. The devotion is happening inside a zone with no consequences. It is closeness inside a bubble. And a bubble is not a foundation. Scene 2. The bond deepens. After a few dates, there is intimacy. Not just physical intimacy, emotional intimacy. They talk late. They share childhood stories. Ethan says things that sound like commitment. Ethan says, "I feel connected to you." Ethan says, "I do not want to lose this." Ethan says, "You are different." Claire believes it, not because Claire is naive, but because it matches the behavior so far. Claire is not chasing. Claire is simply responding to consistency. This matters. People blame anxious attachment for being too much, but often the anxious system is simply responding to instability. When the bond is steady, the anxious system can be calm. Claire is calm right now. Claire is present. Claire is not spiraling. Claire is not testing. Claire is just bonding normally. Scene 3. The first structure request. A few days after intimacy, Claire asks something normal. Claire says, "What are we doing this weekend?" Or Claire says, "Are we on the same page about seeing each other?" Or Claire says, "Can we be clear that we are not dating other people?" Claire does not give a speech. Claire does not demand a promise. Claire asks for basic structure. This is the moment that matters. Watch Ethan. Ethan smiles at first, then the energy shifts. The eyes look away, the body tightens, the voice becomes lighter or more distant. Ethan says, "Can we not make it heavy?" Ethan says, "Let us just enjoy what we have." Ethan says, "You are overthinking." Ethan says, "I have a lot going on." Ethan says, "I do not like pressure." Claire feels the temperature drop and immediately tries to rescue it. Claire says, No, I am not trying to pressure you. I was just asking." Claire laughs a little. Claire softens the need. Claire swallows the fear. Claire tries to keep the warm version in the room. This is where the loop starts. Not with the disappearance, with the first self-abandonment. The moment you learn that your need makes them leave, you start editing your needs. You start learning their nervous system and managing it, even if you do not call it that. Scene 4. The vanish. Ethan leaves that conversation without resolution. Maybe Ethan says, "We will talk later." Maybe Ethan says, "Tomorrow." Claire goes to bed unsettled. Claire wakes up and checks the phone. No message. Noon passes. Still nothing. Claire tries to stay calm. Claire tells themselves, Ethan is busy. Claire tells themselves, do not be needy. Claire waits. Evening arrives. Claire sends a gentle text. "Hey, hope your day is okay." Nothing. Now Claire is in tracking mode. Claire replays the conversation. Claire blames the timing. Claire blames the wording. Claire blames the need itself. Claire starts bargaining. If I do not mention it again, the good version will come back. If I act chill, Ethan will feel safe. Claire's nervous system is not seeking drama. Claire's nervous system is seeking relief. And this is the part people do not understand. The anxious system is not chasing pain. It is chasing the end of pain. Scene 5. The return. After a day or two, Ethan returns. Ethan texts like nothing happened. "Hey, stranger." Or Ethan sends a sweet line. "I miss you." Or Ethan says, "Sorry, I have been slammed." Ethan might even add affection. "You are on my mind." Claire feels a rush of relief so strong, it feels like the problem is solved. Claire responds quickly. Claire resets to normal. Claire does not bring up the vanish, because Claire does not want to lose the warmth. This is the reinforcement. The nervous system learns a rule. Silence gets rewarded. Needs get punished. The avoidant learns that disappearing works. The anxious learns that swallowing needs brings connection back. The loop is now installed. Now the cycle repeats with variations. Each cycle makes the present moments feel more valuable and the vanish moments feel more frightening because the stakes are higher. Claire is more bonded. Ethan is more comfortable with access. Claire starts living on a thin edge where one question might trigger disappearance. Claire starts pre-apologizing for needs that are not even stated. Claire starts timing texts. Claire starts checking the phone less in public, but thinking about it constantly inside. Claire calls this being chill. It is not chill. It is survival. Now, let us pause and name what just happened, because clarity comes from naming structure. What Ethan offered was commitment-flavored behavior inside a low-obligation zone. Many avoidant people can feel deeply connected when the relationship is a feeling, not an agreement. They can mean the tender words in that moment. But the moment structure appears, the connection collapses into distance. So the real question is not, did Ethan mean it? The real question is, can Ethan hold a bond when it becomes real? That is capacity. Caring is not capacity. Missing you is not capacity. Intensity is not capacity. Capacity is consistency, clarity, repair, and the ability to tolerate needs without punishing the person who has them. Now we go deeper into why avoidant attachment prefers disappearing after those devoted moments. Because it will stop you from chasing the wrong proof. For many avoidant nervous systems, devotion is easier than structure. Devotion is emotional. Devotion is a vibe. Devotion can be expressed without being accountable. Structure is measurable. Structure creates expectations. Structure means if I say we are exclusive, I have to behave exclusive. If I say I will call, I have to call. If I say I am building with you, I have to show up even when I feel overwhelmed. Avoidant attachment often learned that being needed leads to pressure and loss of autonomy. So when Claire asks for clarity, Ethan's body hears, I am about to be trapped. Ethan's body hears, I will be responsible. Ethan's body hears, I will fail. Ethan's body hears, I will be controlled. The body responds with distance, because distance restores a sense of freedom, and freedom feels like safety. That is why they disappear. Disappearing is self-regulation. It is not necessarily cruelty, but the impact is still harmful. Now we look at the anxious side with the same honesty. When Ethan returns, Claire's anxiety stops. The nervous system calms. The brain labels Ethan as the solution. But Ethan was also the trigger. This is why the bond becomes addictive. Your body starts chasing the end of pain, not the person. It feels like love because it is intense. But intensity is not intimacy. Intimacy is steadiness plus truth. Now we continue the case, because this is where most people get stuck for months or years. After the first vanish, Claire becomes more careful. Claire tries to not ask direct questions. Claire tries to be the low-need version of themselves. Claire is afraid that if they ask for clarity again, Ethan will disappear again. Ethan senses the pressure is lower, so Ethan becomes warm again. There are more affectionate nights. There are more sweet messages. Claire feels hopeful. Claire thinks maybe the first vanish was a fluke. Then, when Claire gets brave again and asks for structure, Ethan disappears again. The loop repeats, and each time, Claire's self-respect erodes a little. Not because Claire is weak, but because Claire is being trained by intermittent reinforcement. The reward is unpredictable. Sometimes Ethan is present and tender. Sometimes Ethan vanishes. Unpredictable rewards keep the brain locked in tracking mode. Claire starts accepting smaller and smaller versions of a relationship. Claire starts calling crumbs progress. Claire starts treating peace like a luxury that must be earned. Claire starts telling themselves, I should not need this. Claire starts lowering the bar to stop the anxiety. That is how self-respect gets traded for relief. Now, here is the moment that changes everything. Claire finally decides to address the pattern directly. Claire does not do it in a dramatic way. Claire does it in a structured way. Claire waits until Ethan is present and calm, not right after a vanish, and not in the heat of anxiety. Claire says one sentence. I like being close to you. I need consistency to keep going. When you disappear after I ask for basics, it dysregulates me. Can we talk about how we handle that? This is a capacity test, and it reveals truth faster than any amount of analyzing. There are two main outcomes. Outcome one is capacity. Ethan might feel uncomfortable, but Ethan stays. Ethan says, "You are right, I do shut down." Ethan says, "I can do better." Ethan says, "If I need space, I will say it, and I will come back when I say I will." Ethan says, "Let us agree on what you can count on." Then Ethan follows through. That is repair. That is growth. That is real devotion backed by structure. Outcome two is no capacity. Ethan says, "You are making it a big deal." Ethan says, "I was busy." Ethan says, "You are too much." Ethan says, "I do not owe you constant communication." Ethan says, "Why do you need to define everything?" Ethan gets irritated or goes silent again. That is the answer. Not a moral judgment, an answer. If someone cannot handle one calm structure conversation, they cannot hold a relationship that requires steadiness. Now we name the trick that keeps anxious people confused. The trick is affection used as a bypass. When Claire brings up the pattern, Ethan becomes sweet. Ethan says, "I miss you." Ethan says, "Do not overthink." Ethan says, "Come over." Ethan hugs Claire. Ethan kisses Claire. Claire softens. The conversation disappears. The affection becomes a substitute for repair. This feels loving, but it is actually avoidance. It is emotional soothing without structural change. And if you accept it, you teach the system that sweetness replaces accountability. The next vanish will happen again. So the rule is simple. Affection is welcome, but it does not replace repair. Warmth is not the same as structure. A return is not a reset. Now, I want to give you the exact response that ends the bypass without escalating. You say, "I like feeling close to you. Before we go back to normal, I need us to address what happened and agree on what we do next time. If we can do that, I'm in. If not, I will take space." This is calm. It is not punishment. It is a boundary that protects your nervous system. It also changes the reinforcement. You are no longer rewarding disappear and return cycles with instant access. Now, let us talk about the most painful version of this pattern: affection after you pull away. Many anxious people notice this. When you get tired and go quiet, the avoidant returns with intensity. They send a long message. They act like they are afraid of losing you. They offer tenderness. You think, finally, they care. This is where proof thinking matters. Ask one question. Does the return create structure or only closeness? Do they make a plan and keep it? Do they define anything? Do they repair the pattern? Do they handle your need without punishment? Or do they only restore access? If it is only access, you are still in the loop. Now we need a clean way to tell devotion from access without turning it into a puzzle. Here is your capacity filter. 1. Consistency. Do they do what they say? 2. Clarity. Can they answer basic questions without punishing you? 3. Repair. Do they address the rupture and change behavior? 4. Integration. Do they include you in real life, not just private moments? 5. Nervous system respect. When you have a need, do they respond with care or distance? If warmth is present but these are missing, you are being accessed, not held. Now I want to address the fear that stops people from holding structure. The fear is, if I require repair, I will lose them. You might. But if you lose someone by asking for the basics, you were not being held in a stable bond. You were being held in a moment. You were being kept close while your needs were treated as threats. That is not the kind of devotion your nervous system can live in. Now we give Claire one more scene, because it shows you what self-respect looks like in real time. Ethan disappears again after another tender week. Claire feels the urge to chase. Claire feels the old panic. Claire does not chase. Claire sends one message, short and calm. I enjoy us. I need consistency. When you are ready to talk about how we handle gaps, let me know. Then Claire stops. Claire goes back to life. Claire does not punish. Claire does not beg. Claire stops rewarding the pattern. If Ethan has capacity, Ethan will return to repair, not just to access. If Ethan does not have capacity, Ethan will return only with sweetness or not return at all. Either way, Claire gains clarity. Claire stops guessing. Claire's nervous system begins to settle because it is no longer being trained by uncertainty. Now I want to give you micro scenes that show how this pattern hides inside normal life, because people often think disappearing means blocking or full ghosting. Sometimes disappearing is softer, and that is what makes it so confusing. Micro scene 1 is affectionate morning and vanished afternoon. They text good morning with softness. Then you ask a simple question like, can we lock in Friday? And they do not reply until midnight. They return with, sorry, busy day. Your nervous system receives one message. Affection is free, but structure costs you. Micro scene 2 is present in crisis and absent in routine. They show up when you are sad or overwhelmed. Then, when life is calm and you ask for consistency, they withdraw. Being needed in crisis can feel safe to them. Routine feels like expectation. Expectation triggers threat. Micro scene 3 is intimate in private and vague in daylight. They hold you, they say sweet things, but they do not integrate you, do not plan ahead, do not define anything. You feel chosen in moments, unsafe over time. Micro scene 4 is tenderness after they hurt you. They cross a boundary, then they become affectionate, not accountable. You soften, but the behavior repeats. Micro scene 5 is romance as a distraction. You ask a real question. They respond with sweetness instead of an answer. That is not devotion. That is avoidance in a nicer outfit. Now we talk about what this does to your self-respect, because that is where people break. You start betraying your own perception. Your body says, this is unstable. Your mind says, be patient. Your body says, you deserve steadiness. Your mind says, do not ask. Every time you override your body to keep access, you teach yourself that your needs are unsafe. Now, the nervous system mechanics are simple. Warmth drops you out of threat. Disappearance spikes you into threat. Threat creates urgency. Urgency creates reaching. Reaching creates relief if they respond. Relief creates bonding. Bonding makes the next spike worse. That is why this is addictive. The addiction is relief after threat. Now we bring this back to proof thinking, because proof thinking breaks addiction. Proof thinking means you do not ask, did they mean it? You ask, do they repeat it with consistency? You do not ask, do they miss me? You ask, do they repair? Here is the simplest proof question you can carry into every interaction. What can I count on this week? A person with capacity can answer without punishing you. A person without capacity will make you feel guilty for asking. Now we build Claire a 7-day proof plan. Day 1. Claire stops chasing after a disappearance. No multiple messages, no performing calmness. Day 2. When Ethan returns, Claire does not reset. Claire requires repair before normal. Claire says, I am glad you are here. We need to address the gap and agree on what happens next time. Day 3. Claire asks for one small, measurable structure. A plan on a calendar, a call at a time, a clear agreement on what happens if someone needs space. Day 4. Claire watches follow-through. Day 5. Claire sets one boundary. If you need space, name it and tell me when you will return. No silent disappearances. Day 6. Claire watches the response to the boundary. Engage or punish. Day 7. Claire decides based on patterns. Now, here is the moment you either keep your dignity or trade it away. Ethan returns after a vanish and says, I missed you. I want to see you tonight. Claire's body wants to say yes immediately. Claire pauses and remembers the rule. Warmth is welcome, but it does not replace repair. Claire says, I want to see you too. Before we do, we need to talk about what happens when you go quiet after we get close. I cannot keep doing the devoted, then disappear cycle. If Ethan responds with care and conversation, Claire has something real. If Ethan responds with irritation, blame, or another vanish, Claire has the answer. Claire does not chase the answer. Claire accepts it. Now, I want to add one final fork in the case, because this is where the present then disappear pattern becomes either a repairable issue or a permanent cost. After Claire holds the boundary, Ethan has a choice. Ethan can say, I hear you. I got overwhelmed. I will not vanish again. And then prove it with one simple action, a scheduled call, a plan made in advance, and a message that names space instead of going silent. Or Ethan can say, you are too much. You are controlling. You are creating drama. And then disappear again. The first path creates a relationship. The second path creates an addiction loop. In the first path, Claire's nervous system starts to settle because the bond is becoming predictable. In the second path, Claire's nervous system becomes more activated because now the warm version feels rarer and the disappear version feels more dangerous. That is why you must not judge the relationship by sweetness alone. You judge it by what happens after you ask for repair. Your body is the scoreboard. If you feel calm over time, that is structure. If you only feel calm in moments, that is a loop. Trust the pattern, not the spike. Now we close with the rule that protects your self-respect. Do not reward warmth that is followed by disappearance with instant access. Require repair before normal. Require clarity before closeness becomes routine. Require consistency before you offer exclusivity. This is not punishment. This is nervous system safety. And remember, the stories will change, but the structure will not. One week it is work, another week it is stress, another week it is needing time, another week it is not liking pressure. If the pattern is close then vanish, your job is not to decode the story. Your job is to evaluate capacity through behavior. The goal is not to get the warm version to stay by becoming easier. The goal is to stop giving access to someone who cannot hold you when you are real. Devotion that is real can tolerate clarity, repair, and a schedule. If closeness collapses into disappearance, it is a loop, not a bond. You do not have to hate someone to step out of a loop. You can care and still choose yourself. You can understand their fear and still require consistency. That is what secure energy looks like. Calm, clear, consistent. It refuses to be trained by vanish and return cycles. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.